Gen Z is often described as the most connected generation in history. They grew up with smartphones, social media, instant messaging, and constant access to the internet. For many of them, the online world is not separate from real life. It is part of how they communicate, learn, express themselves, and build relationships. Research from Pew shows that digital and social platform use is deeply embedded in teen life, with major platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat playing a daily role for many young people. But this level of connection has also created a serious psychological challenge. Many young people today are not only trying to build a future, they are also trying to build an identity while being watched, compared, evaluated, and influenced almost all the time. That makes the process of growing up very different from what earlier generations experienced. This is not just a story about phones or apps. It is a story about what happens when identity develops in an environment of constant exposure, constant feedback, and constant comparison. The new identity problem. In the past, identity was usually shaped in a slower and more stable way. People were influenced by family, local community, school, religion, culture, and the limited social circles around them. Their sense of self developed over time through repeated real-world experiences. Today, that process looks very different. Gen Z is growing up in a world where identity is not only lived, but also displayed. Young people are expected to present themselves online, express opinions publicly, document experiences, and signal who they are through content, style, interests, and social presence. That creates pressure. Because identity is no longer just something a person discovers internally. It also becomes something they feel they must present externally. And once identity becomes public, it can start to feel unstable. A young person may begin asking, who am I in real life? Who am I online? Which version of me do people like more? Which version feels more successful? Which version feels accepted? This is where the confusion begins. Multiple versions of the self. One reason this issue feels so intense is because many young people are managing multiple versions of themselves at the same time. There is the private self, the person with doubts, fears, unfinished thoughts, and real emotions. There is the social self, the version shown to friends, classmates, co-workers, or followers. And there is the ideal self, the version a person wants to become or feels they should become. These versions do not always match. When the gap between them becomes too wide, people can start feeling emotionally divided. They may look confident online but feel deeply uncertain offline. They may appear productive, attractive, or socially successful while privately feeling directionless or disconnected. This mismatch creates inner tension. And over time, that tension can lead to anxiety, self-doubt, insecurity, and emotional exhaustion. Why social media intensifies the crisis? Social media does not create every identity problem, but it can intensify them. That is because social media changes how people see themselves and how often they evaluate themselves. Instead of comparing themselves occasionally, young people can now compare themselves continuously. They do not just see friends from school or people in their neighborhood. They see influencers, creators, entrepreneurs, fitness experts, beauty standards, luxury lifestyles, relationship content, and personal success stories all day long. And most of that content is selective. People usually post highlights, not confusion. Results, not struggle. Confidence, not insecurity. Achievement, not uncertainty. So even when everyone is dealing with personal problems, many still appear polished and successful on the screen. Research supports the idea that social media can amplify upward comparison. A 2023 study in communication psychology found that greater social media use among children and young adolescents was associated with more upward social comparison, and those comparisons were linked to reduced well-being and lower self-worth. That means the damage is often not just in using the platform itself, but in the mental habit it can strengthen. Seeing others as ahead, better, happier, more attractive, or more accomplished. This leads to a pattern that many people experience without even noticing it. They open an app. They see someone doing better. They feel behind. They question themselves. Then they keep scrolling. This is the comparison loop. And it is powerful because it works quietly. A person may not consciously say, I feel worse now. But after repeated exposure, they may begin feeling less satisfied with their own body, career progress, social life, appearance, or personality. The problem is that the comparison is often unfair from the start. People compare their real life, with all its uncertainty, mistakes, delays, and private struggles, to curated snapshots from other people's lives. That distorts self-perception. And once self-perception becomes distorted, identity becomes harder to stabilize. When self-worth depends on feedback. Another major issue is validation. Social platforms are built around response, likes, views, comments, shares, reposts, reach, and engagement. That can gradually train young people to connect attention with worth. If something performs well, they feel seen. If it gets ignored, they may feel invisible. If others respond positively, they feel accepted. If the response is weak, they may begin questioning themselves. The U.S. Surgeon General's Advisory on Social Media and Youth Mental Health says that adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media face about double the risk of experiencing poor mental health outcomes such as symptoms of depression and anxiety. The advisory also says we cannot conclude social media is sufficiently safe for children and adolescents. The American Psychological Association takes a balanced position. Social media is not automatically harmful or beneficial. Its effects depend on how it is used, the age of the user, the kind of content involved, and whether it interferes with sleep, physical activity, and offline relationships. That is important. Because the issue is not just using social media. The issue is what happens when identity starts depending too much on external reaction. The performance trap. Once feedback becomes important, behavior begins to change. People may stop posting what is meaningful and start posting what is likely to perform well. They may shape opinions more carefully. Hide parts of themselves. Delete things that do not get enough engagement. Present a more polished version of their life than they actually feel. This is the performance trap. At that point, identity is no longer just about self-expression. It becomes strategy. A person starts thinking less about authenticity and more about perception. What will people think? Will this get attention? Will this make me look smart, attractive, interesting, or successful? The more often that happens, the easier it becomes to lose touch with the quieter and more honest parts of the self. Why Gen Z feels especially vulnerable. Gen Z faces a unique combination of pressures. They are expected to succeed academically or professionally, build a future in an unstable economy, stay socially relevant, develop a personal identity, manage mental health, and in many cases, maintain a visible digital presence while doing all of it. They have more freedom than many earlier generations in some ways, but they also face more complexity, more choices, more comparison, more information, more pressure to define themselves early, more pressure to stand out. This can produce what feels like identity overload. Instead of clarity, there is confusion. Instead of direction, there is overthinking. Instead of commitment, there is hesitation. Too many possible selves can make it harder to become any one person with confidence. Under all of this, there is often a deeper emotional fear. It is not only fear of failure. It is fear of becoming irrelevant. In an attention-driven culture, visibility can begin to feel like proof of value. When people are constantly seeing who is trending, growing, winning, or being noticed, they may start believing that being unseen means being unimportant. That belief is dangerous. Because it makes silence feel personal. It makes low engagement feel like low worth. And it makes a person dependent on attention for emotional reassurance. This is one reason so many young people feel lost even when they are constantly connected. They are surrounded by signals. But they are starving for internal stability. Many young people face what psychologists call identity overload. They are managing multiple responsibilities and expectations simultaneously. Academic achievement, career and internship, social presence, online hobbies and personal passions, personal branding, social relationships. Handling all these roles can lead to decision fatigue. Each choice, big or small, requires mental energy. Over time, constantly evaluating who to be, what to post, and how to act can reduce the ability to make clear, confident decisions in other areas of life. Pew Research shows that teens spend significant time online daily, with about 15 to 20% reporting almost constant engagement on platforms like TikTok and YouTube. Emotional impact. Extended social media use has measurable effects on emotional well-being. Frequent upward social comparisons, comparing oneself to others who appear more successful or happier, are linked to lower self-esteem and reduced life satisfaction. Increased exposure to curated content can amplify anxiety, feelings of inadequacy, and depressive symptoms. Emotional states can fluctuate rapidly depending on online feedback, likes, or perceived social approval. According to the U.S. Surgeon General, teens spending more than 3 hours a day on social media have roughly double the risk of developing symptoms of depression and anxiety. Patterns of behavior. A common pattern develops over time. Scroll, open social media to check updates. Compare, measure oneself against others' curated lives. React, feel validated or inadequate depending on responses. Adjust, change content or behavior to gain more positive feedback. Repeat, loop continues unconsciously. This feedback loop can become a dominant influence on behavior and self-perception, especially for teens who may not yet have fully developed coping strategies. Research insights. Studies emphasize that upward social comparison mediates the effect of social media on adolescent well-being. Teens who engage in more upward comparisons experience lower positive self-worth and higher negative self-worth on a daily basis. These comparisons affect both self-esteem and affective well-being, showing measurable psychological impact. Notably, it is not just total screen time, but the quality and context of interactions that matter most. The APA notes that social media use is not inherently harmful, but risks increase when platforms interfere with sleep, physical activity, offline social interaction, or foster cyberbullying, discrimination, or excessive comparison. Recovery and self-awareness. Overcoming identity overload requires awareness and intentional action. Notice personal patterns of social media use. Track triggers that lead to negative emotions to create intentional boundaries. Limit checking, reduce time on certain platforms, or curate content intentionally. Reflect on personal values. Separate who you are from what gains attention online. Even small changes, like taking breaks from social media or spending time in offline activities, can help restore clarity and emotional balance. Rebuilding identity and emotional stability. Steps toward a healthier self-perception include: focus on intrinsic goals, prioritize personal interests and growth over external validation. Reduce reliance on feedback loops, engage less with metrics like likes and shares. Strengthen offline connections, meaningful relationships build stable self-esteem. Practice reflection and mindfulness, recognize patterns of thought without judgment. Over time, these practices allow young people to reconnect with authentic identity, independent of online performance or comparison.